up? This is John Nelson, and you are listening to the Starting Block Podcast. If you are looking for a show that talks about complete athletic development, then you have come across the right show. So, if you are new to our show, we appreciate you joining, and here is the breakdown. Our show is a little bit different than the average podcast. We have 3 different types of episodes. Episode 1, we are going to do Q&A. This is also our soup du jour and our ode to Dumb and Dumber. We're big Dumb and Dumber guys. And so that's kind of episode 1. We will take your questions and we'll answer them. And you can email those questions into us at info@elitelevelperformance.com or hit us up on social media. We'll give out all those handles here at the end. The second type of episode is going to be our Friday Fire. And Friday Fire is going to be about a 10-minute segment where I just go ahead and brain dump on you. You guys know I'm pretty passionate about what we do, and so it may be some entrepreneurship, leadership advice. It may just be me telling you to get off your butt and get to the gym. And usually I'll just drop some insight I feel like needs to be said. And then our next episode is going to be your guest interview. And so our guest interviews, we will bring our colleagues on from across the country, honestly, man, across the world, and hear their success stories, hear how they have won and how they're helping their clients and their athletes win. And you know, guys, if you've been listening to us for a while, you know that this show is all about winning. We are here to help give you the tools to win as the athlete, the client, you know, the parent, the coach. Like, that's our whole objective, is to help you guys win. And so it's pretty cool when we get some guest interviews on. And so today I'm joined by my co-hosts, Chris Scarborough and Mandy.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Welcome. And then the final announcement. Now, I don't have to make a grand announcement because you probably are already tuning in because you know who is on the show today. However, if you just clicked and missed it, I would like to introduce a dear friend of mine, honestly a very good friend, somebody, him and I go way back, and I'm very, very proud of what he has built. He is also, he has now claimed his company is an Inc. 5000 top 500 company in the country, I believe. And this is the founder of NeuFit, Mr. Neubie, Mr. Garrett Salpeter. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, John, Chris. Great to be here with you, and Mandy too. Which one of you is Lloyd and which one is Harry?
Yeah.
That's the question.
I asked that question before too, Garrett. I was, that's a little, yeah, I still haven't gotten an answer. So
I don't know. That'd be a hard one.
I'm the better looking one, but I don't have as much hair, so I'm not sure who that makes me. But
well,
well, I feel like then you can't be hairy because, you know, just give you the little gap tooth and call it good.
You know, the first one was good, but the last one was kind of questionable. Like, it was not a great movie. But anyways, man, so for those of you who don't know who Garrett Salpeter is, like I said, Garrett is the founder, director, CEO of NeuFit down in Austin, Texas. You might have heard of the Neubie and everything that it does. You know, at ELP, we have 3 of the units here. Chris, I know you've got a unit down in Birmingham,
yes,
correct?
Correct. Yep, love it.
Cool. And so, yeah, Garrett, man, we appreciate you coming on. It's a pleasure to have you, dude. So
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. I have tremendous respect for what you are doing in your businesses in Memphis and in Birmingham, and I'm excited to be here and talk shop.
Cool, man. So, I mean, let's get after it. Like I said, there's really no script to our show. I like this to be as authentic as possible. So part of the show is keeping me on track. It doesn't help as I drink another energy drink, but we'll try to keep me on track. And, you know, we'll start out like, Garrett, I mean, tell our audience a little bit about kind of NeuFit, what y'all's mission is, in case there's anybody listening who's not familiar with you guys, and then we'll kind of get into the backstory a little bit. So what is NeuFit and what's y'all's mission? What are you guys all about?
I believe that the most powerful and transformative way to help people recover from pain and injury is to work with the nervous system. And so a big part of our mission is to bring neuroscience into daily practice in physical therapy, in chiropractic, in athletic training, and in strength and conditioning. And the reason for that is I've seen the wide-ranging impact that working with the nervous system can have in helping people recover faster from injury, improve their performance, reverse chronic pain, restore function that they've lost because of strokes or MS or spinal cord injury. Not to mention the other health benefits, because the nervous system controls all of the organs of the body. I mean, if you look at the most common lifestyle diseases that we have in our society today, we've got heart rate, blood pressure, cardiovascular issues. We've got digestive and waste elimination issues, fertility issues. All those organs are controlled and activated or not by the parasympathetic nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. And so it's just, I think, so often overlooked in the standard of care across all of these disciplines. And really, that's the biggest part of our mission. Of course, we use a tool, the Neubie, for neurobioelectric stimulator, and we can get into what that does. But we use a direct current tool as one of our primary ways of communicating with and influencing the nervous system. And then we also, in our certification courses, teach some manual activation techniques. We teach some different joint mobilizations. One interesting corollary to that, if we talk about the importance of the nervous system, is that joints are so much more neurologically rich than, say, muscles. And so moving joints and focusing more on joints than on stretching muscles often can be helpful and can lead to greater mobility changes, for example. So it leads us to do some of the things that we do, because working with the nervous system and influencing the nervous system is kind of our North Star.
Yeah. Cool. So let's go back to kind of, let's trace back probably, gosh, I don't know what, Garrett, 10, 15 years. I mean, I think you and I have known each other for about 10 years or so, something like that. And shoot, I remember, hey, Chris, too, I remember back when Doc had his Facebook group, and all of y'all commenting back and forth. And I think, Garrett, that's how I first found out about you guys, or at least you. I think you were probably getting started, and Chris, that's how I kind of found out about you too. And I think that's how I ended up reaching out to you, is I found you on one of those blog posts or discussion boards that have been since removed.
Oh, sure.
But Garrett, but Garrett, so what, we've known each other for a while, and I'm kind of do this episode like I don't know anything about the Neubie at all, and so want to kind of keep it general to a degree, but then maybe towards the end we can dig in a little bit deeper. But tell everybody, how you got started. How did NeuFit get going? Where did the idea come, for you to develop the Neubie, and kind of go into that process a little bit?
So the first real catalyst was actually an experience I had back when I was in college. So I was a Division III ice hockey player. I put my heart and soul into it, but honestly was never really that good. But I'm grateful for everything I learned and how it shaped my life, including this particular experience, which is I had an injury. I had some torn ligaments. I was supposed to be out for 3+ months and have surgery. And I got introduced to functional neurology and direct current, and using those two things. So functional neurology is so interesting because that's looking more at the software of the body, more nervous system function, as opposed to the hardware and the tissues that were damaged or broken. And I think that so many times in physical therapy, orthopedic medicine, et cetera, that we are enamored with and so focused on the tissues and kind of forget a lot about the functional component of that. And so by prioritizing function, by looking at the neurological response to injury and trauma, we were able to set my body up to support it healing, and then implementing direct current was able to help give that added stimulus to heal, and my ligaments healed on their own. I was back in 2.5 weeks instead of 3+ months, and it not only did it really excite me just because of the results, but it really created this calling within me because it also made sense to me from first principles. I was a physics major. I was going on to engineering graduate school, and with that engineering mindset, I do a lot of work in the physical therapy world now, even though I'm a non-clinician. We work with a lot of colleagues and people that we work with, in PT. But I think coming at it without that traditional PT training, it has some pros and some cons. But I think having that engineering mindset, I think one of the blessings is that mindset allows me to look at things from more of a kind of problem-solving mentality and build a scientific case. And I was so excited about this because it made sense from first principles. I felt like we were getting more to the root of the cause of why it takes so long to recover, or why the body won't heal, or why surgery is needed in cases where it might be borderline, or you might not necessarily have to do it. So I was just going through this experience. I felt called to share this work with as many people as I could. I came down to Austin, University of Texas, Hook'em Horns, for engineering school, and while I was here, I connected with a guy who was the chiropractor for the UT football team, and I started working out of his clinics. I had a 150 square foot room starting out. This is now 14 years ago, and so I started using older technology. I did some training with our mutual friend Dr. J, and learned the really in-depth functional neurology from him. And then over the years,
Doc is going to be on too
Yes.
here in a couple of weeks. So
yeah. Perfect. I'm excited to listen to that one. So I got to go up. I was in Minnesota for something. I got to have dinner with him, spend a half a day, spend an evening with him up there and catch up. I hadn't seen him in several years. It was great.
Yeah. Well, like you're definitely, like, you guys, the three of y'all are definitely way above me. Let's see, Garrett, you're an engineer. Let's see, Mandy has a degree from Georgia Tech in computer engineering and a doctor in naturopathic medicine. Chris, former physical therapist
And current moron,
management.
but that's along that line, Garrett, think about what you said a minute ago. You're talking about how the joints are so much more rich, I guess is the best way to say it, neurologically rich. I can't remember the exact terminology you used, but if you were to, do you see most of the way that you're both training, as whether it be for performance or for rehab or for whatever, do you see it more now moving toward input based, meaning input being like proprioception, toward you're seeing a lot of these clinicians move toward the vestibular and the visual input, in the way that they're, like, so not just treating the injured, but also training for performance. Are you seeing that in your clinic as well, where things are moving more toward that input-based, sensory, I guess you'd say sensory-based, and then letting the motor output part follow?
Yeah, and I think that's really one of the big, underlying fundamental principles of our work at NeuFit, and I'd like to think we're helping to lead the conversation, lead the charge in that direction, because from my perspective at least, so many of the traditional methods of rehabilitation and training are output based. It's, hey, run harder, or jump, put out more effort, or hey,
Right.
shift to the left, because when you're at the bottom of your squat, you're shifting to the right. And you could do that over thousands and thousands of repetitions to reprogram the motor pattern in that output-based approach, but you're going to have a lot of bad reps along the way. It's you're going to be fighting an uphill battle because there's some underlying pattern that's telling you to move over to the right side. And so if we can find the inputs, all of a sudden we may see someone, without even thinking about it, shift back into a more neutral, more balanced position, from one rep to the next, and you'll be like, "Oh, hey, it's neutral," and they'll be like, "Oh, it just feels like normal now," because maybe there was some inhibition or excessive tension from an old injury on their, on their left side. They were trying to stay away from it, or maybe there was some hypersensitivity and which leads to this, perception of threat, which leads to pain that was causing them not to want to load that side. Whatever it was, if we can find those, then we have an opportunity to make change a lot faster. And it's, I think this is, a really cool concept to talk about the difference between rehab and training, because in many ways I would advocate that they're the same, that you're trying to create tissue changes, improve coordination, function, performance. You're trying to, the goals really are the same, maybe just at different levels. But where the difference comes between,
Well, and I'm going to interrupt you real quick there, and
Yep.
because, like, I agree with you, and we're speaking the same language. Because that's kind of one of the things that I thought when we started ELP years ago. And like another note, like, and continue, but like, I think that that line particularly, like obviously we got to be very respectful of that line, but there are so many scenarios where people still come into a training standpoint are still dealing with pain, they're dealing with injury, and I think it's very important for that segment, like the training, the strength and conditioning, the personal trainer, that segment of the industry to have a good understanding of kind of how to blend it, so to speak, with the and of course staying within boundaries and lines and all that. And I think that's something like for the NeuFit and the Neubie does a very great job of. Like, it's not designed to replace something, but it can definitely help assist and help a practitioner kind of bridge that gap a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And so to Chris's point also about the kind of input based approach, I kind of categorize the process that we go through with people into that, two stages, the rehab and training. And so for me, I would say that rehab is finding where any of this neurological response to injury and trauma is limiting performance, where the excessive tension and guarding and bracing, or the inhibition, neurological inhibition or shutting down of muscles, or that hypersensitivity that leads to pain, where any of those are present, and then finding the neurological commands to get back to baseline. And then from there, once we get back to baseline, that person is capable of expressing whatever their current level of potential is, and then training to me is then lifting that potential. So it's sort of like the rehab part would be if you have a 6-cylinder engine, and you're injured, only 3 cylinders are firing. So rehab was like getting back to having all 6 cylinders firing, and then training would be like building 2 new cylinders to go to a V8 or something like that. And the interesting thing about the rehab phase is that sometimes these outcomes that we see will be miraculous. We'll have someone come in. I know you guys have experiences like this, on a regular basis, but we'll have an athlete come in, maybe a football player who had a grade 2 AC separation. They can't lift their arm more than 30 degrees, and it's really painful. And in one session, their arm is all the way up overhead, and it's like, gosh, what did you do to me? Well, obviously, in one session, the ligaments did not just all of a sudden heal back together, right? It wasn't a structural change. What happened was a functional change. They got back to their baseline. They tapped into potential for movement and activation and coordination and output that was already there. They were just blocking themselves from being able to express it. So that to me is the rehab.
That right there, like, okay, for like a healthcare provider who's listening to this, or somebody who's really trained in that respect, when you're talking about the AC joint, and then all of a sudden you go through a session and just everything unlocks and they've got better range of motion, like you said, the ligaments and all that, they're not healed yet. And so how would you respond if somebody says, okay, well, we say we eliminated kind of that perception of threat, got the body to kind of relax a little bit, but is there the chance that you've now the body was shutting that down for a reason, to protect it, and so by eliminating that perception of threat, could that be a negative? And if, like, why not?
That's a great question, because the body has all of these built-in protective mechanisms and safety features, and they are there for a reason. So excellent question. And of course, first, do no harm. We want to make sure that what we're doing is not putting people at any sort of increased risk of injury, re-injury. And so it's a very important topic. And what we're doing, fortunately, is providing input, like Chris talked about, this input-based approach. We're providing input to the brain so that it can recalibrate and find the appropriate level, because so many times these safety mechanisms, these protective mechanisms, the tension, the inhibition, they're valuable, they're useful, but they're set too conservatively. And that's because of injury and trauma, because of bad habits developed over time, because of our brain's number one priority is survival and protection. So it wants us to do it wants us to do less, not more. It wants to make sure we don't move too fast or create too much tension or move too far, because we could get injured. And then to the brain, and the most earliest, evolutionarily speaking, survival oriented parts of the brain, that is literally a life or death proposition. So our brains want us to do less, and that is a big part of the reason why over time, especially with bad habits, if we get kind of lazy, those protective mechanisms adapt to the levels at which we're using them. And so they get set too conservatively. So this gives us a chance to reset them, but we're not turning them off. We're just sending information to the brain so it can have a chance to recalibrate. And if in that case, the AC joint were just literally like that ligament were severed, or it was too severely damaged, we would not have seen as much progress.
So,
yeah, and that kind of comes up with another question, or more an explanation for the audience to hear you explain it. That is one of the things that makes the Neubie so unique in its approach, is the type of current is very harmonious with the body. I mean, would you say that? Or agree with that?
Yeah. So I would say that, and I would say that for a few reasons. The biggest is probably that it's direct current versus alternating current, and then there's other features of the waveform, like the exponential rise and fall, and that most closely matches how charges move across neurological membranes in the body, and so it is harmonious.
Don't use big words, Garrett. Don't use big words. Slow it down for me.
So basically, it's the whole signal is interpreted as closely as any outside signal could be, as closely as possible to whatever signals are happening in the body normally. And so,
and that's a huge difference between DC and AC current. Whereas that AC is going to be working more on that superficial nerve level, and kind of eliciting a protective response. Whereas DC and like the Neubie is actually kind of harmonious, and it's kind of trying to relax things a little bit more rather than initiate even more protection.
I've got a kind of a follow-up question along that line. Is it so? I know that your organization has recently been involved in a lot of this, like hypertrophy, making muscles bigger. Try to keep it simple, right? Making muscles bigger. Yes.
Well, that is the tagline of the show, Chris. Education's important.
Important.
Big biceps
yes,
are important.
Absolutely. Coming from So.
Okay, I think you're Lloyd. I think we just determined it.
So we're after we got these big muscles. We're trying to get these big muscles, right? So your organization, NeuFit, is now kind of on the forefront of using this DC current in order to do that. So my question is, do you feel like it's that DC current in the eccentric, in the training of the eccentric part of the the muscle, making a muscle strong at length? Does that have a big component as far as the muscle mass? Is that the reason why someone can't just go get a TENS unit, crank it up, and make their muscles grow bigger? What is it about DC current in particular that allows for this muscle mass gain, or where you can't get it with, say, that Russian stem, or you can't get it with that, like I said, that TENS unit? Is it that eccentric component to? I'm trying to find the right words. The eccentric component to the DC current, is that the trick, or is that the?
So that's definitely part of it. There's a few factors. I think first, just for context, it's helpful to say, you mentioned that at NeuFit we're, leaders, or some are doing some work in the use of electrical stimulation for muscle hypertrophy. So we have one peer-reviewed journal article published, and the second one about to be published, both looking at this thing, comparing using the Neubie. So using the Neubie on one arm, for example, just doing bicep curls with the pads on but no external weight at all, versus something like 75% of 1 rep max in the other arm. So Neubie with no load versus traditional weightlifting or resistance exercise. And the first study looked at the acute response, which is what's happening immediately after, in the 24 and 48 hours after. So we're looking at fatigue and soreness, which are proxies for the degree of depletion of the muscular structures. We're looking by ultrasound imaging, looking at fluid movement. So like when you get a pump after a workout, some of that is actually good because that means that fluid has moved. So there's the extracellular fluid like blood plasma flowing around in the body. After a workout, you want to see some of that get taken up into the muscle cells. Those muscle cells, you want them to swell because that means they're literally trying to soak up. So like in blood.
Hey, repeat that real quick, Garrett. You cut out. Repeat that.
Oh shoot, sorry. So
no, you're good.
So in blood, there's the red blood cells that carry oxygen, and then there's the blood plasma that carries other the other nutrients and like proteins and building blocks, raw materials to repair structures and things like that. And the muscle cells after a workout, you want to see them swell because they're kind of like sucking up or soaking up some of that blood plasma, that fluid. And so we looked on ultrasound and saw after Neubie workout just as much muscle cell swelling as after traditional resistance exercise. And so that tells us that a similar type of effect is happening. And then the second study about to be published, so I don't know if I can share all the details, but basically took that and looked at, so the first one was the acute phase, then it was what happens over a full 6 to 8 week training cycle, comparing muscle growth using just the Neubie on one leg for knee extensions in the quad compared to traditional resistance exercise, 75 to 80% one rep max on the other leg. And the spoiler alert, or the summary, is that we saw very similar amounts of muscle growth there. So there is, objectively, scientifically measured an effect on muscle growth or hypertrophy or biceps bigger.
Big biceps.
Bigger.
Yeah. Now, is Dr. Buckner, is he heading that research up?
That's right. Yep.
I really like. I read the first study when you released it, and actually, I got in touch with Dr. Buckner a little bit, and I think he's doing some really great stuff with the Neubie. It's so cool to have that type of information with it.
So he
basically,
is.
I want to look like Brad Rowe, is what I'm saying. I need to look like Brad.
Oh yeah, so Brad's great. So Brad Rowe, for anyone who doesn't know, is he's now a retired professional bodybuilder, and he's been working using the Neubie out in LA, collaborating with a few different medical professionals. So he's been using it to help people rehab, helping train. So he's worked with a few bodybuilders. He helped Dexter Jackson, who competed in Mr. Olympia at age 50. So after his legs had started to atrophy a little bit and people thought, okay, he's lost his legs, he's done for, Brad trained him, and he did just one leg session a week for 12 or 6, whatever number of weeks it was leading up to Olympia. And if you look at the before and after, his legs were noticeably bigger, more defined.
Oh, he looked good. I remember the show, yeah.
And he came in 4th place at age 50 on the Mr. Olympia stage.
I remember. I was watching it. Because I'm kind of a bodybuilding dork. Like, that's kind of a passion of mine. And, I want to follow up on the bodybuilding side of it because we've trained 2 people, helped them get their IFBB Pro card, including our physical therapist, Cindy Cotty. She got her IFBB Pro card, and so the bodybuilding side of it is very intriguing to me as well. And I know one of the things that you and I have talked about a little bit before, Garrett, and I think Brad's mentioned at some point, is just kind of the metabolic response, and kind of trying to dial in a little bit more how the Neubie's truly impacting the body, metabolically. Like, I don't want to get too deep into it as far as like really training for a show, like you're really dieting down and trying to figure out how to tweak everything the right way. But what can you say about how the Neubie impacts things from a metabolic standpoint, particularly the bodybuilding and what it requires additionally out of the system?
That's an excellent question. I just want to make sure we touch on. I want to make sure didn't avoid Chris's question. So in terms of the direct current and how it affects the muscles, because I think it plays into this too. So one of the cool things about that direct current, and one of the things that I did actually in the process of going through all the iterations of working with our engineering team and creating the Neubie, is if you have the Neubie on and you turn it up to some of these really high levels, it'll feel really intense, but you're still able to move through it. And then if you take an alternating current device, you can do the same level of current on the opposite arm, and as that signal goes back and forth, positive, negative, you get that agonist, co-contraction. At the same level of current, you'll actually be locked up. So in that one, so with the Neubie, you can get that high input, high load, and also move through it. So yes, Chris, you get those high load eccentric contractions. And there are some really good studies that show that training muscles at greater lengths allow for greater muscle growth benefits. So training your triceps up here as opposed to right here, or something like that. Or there's a couple different studies around that. So yeah, I think that absolutely is a big part of it. I think some of it has to do with the depth of penetration and being able to get more motor units. Also, just the quantity of motor unit recruitment, I think, is part of it. And then to John's point, the metabolic demands, I think it's an example of, I mean, there's research about how, like, after high intensity interval training, like after HIIT workouts, people will have this EPOC, excess post exercise oxygen consumption, right? You'll continue to burn calories at a greater rate. Your metabolic rate will increase as you recover from that exercise. And I think that the same sort of thing is happening after we use the Neubie, because it's so stimulating, and because there's so much more neurological input, the brain really truly understands, hey, we had something happen here. Hey, we really need to shift more fully and more completely into a parasympathetic dominant mode. Hey, we need to trigger a greater sense of hunger, or hey, we need to make sure that we feel sleepier tonight so that we can go get enough sleep to really repair and rebuild so that we can come back stronger to meet that same challenge the next time. So we see often people will have, after a Neubie session, a greater increase in appetite, or they might feel sleepier, or might feel sleepier earlier. And those are all signs that the brain understands, hey, something happened here. Hey, we really need to adapt and respond to this. And so it triggers all these different autonomic activities and these drives and motivations.
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, I tell everybody, the first time you use this thing, number one, the first thing you're going to feel is hungry. And then the second thing you're going to feel is sleepy sooner than normal, just so they know what to expect. Because that's exactly what it's virtually 100% across the board, is that, hey, I've stimulated something here. I need to recover. But kind of along that same line,
exactly.
I know I asked you about muscle hypertrophy a minute ago, but what about speed? Because you had, and by the way, I'm not trying to give away awesome course. Garrett has an awesome course, so I don't want to give away, I don't want you to give away all the great information in that course, but
we don't run ads on the show, but if we were to run an ad on the show, okay?
Yes, they're awesome.
You might want to check out some of these courses.
The question is, though, what are some of your correlations with, say, speed training? Because, that's one thing that every person who comes to me wants to get faster. Now, they want to be bigger, too, which is a little bit, but they want to look good while they run faster. How about that? But I know that there's not necessarily an intuitive correlation between like a setting we might use for training someone for speed and someone that we might be training someone for rehab. What's some of the theories behind that? Behind training someone for speed?
That's a great topic, and I think there's two components to this. Just like how we broke up the rehab phase and the training phase, for example. So sometimes just doing the quote unquote rehab phase, finding these hotspots or neurological guarding and protection, that we do with mapping around on the body with the Neubie. Sometimes finding those without trying to get faster leads to people getting faster, because you're eliminating the impediment. You're getting rid of the reason why they were slower in the first place. They had potential for greater speed. They just couldn't, their brain was preventing them from expressing it because they thought they might get hurt, or they thought it might be dangerous somehow to run faster, to express their full capability. So sometimes it happens and those are cool because it feels like a miracle or something. But so I mentioned that because if someone comes in for speed training, I would certainly recommend starting with a full assessment, as if you were working with an injured patient who's trying to rehab from some sort of injury, because even if they're not injured or they don't have symptoms, they likely will have some compensatory movement patterns, some neurological limitations, and sometimes working on those from a rehab perspective will increase speed, even as just a wonderful side effect. So I would start there, and then once we've worked through those rehabilitation milestones, then we transition into the training where the person is they've kind of reached their current level of potential, and then we're trying to build the engine or build the capability greater. Using the Neubie for speed, there's a couple different approaches that I like. First of all, to understand it, I think we have to understand what really determines speed for an athlete. And the Soviets did some really good work on this. They tried to figure out what was the difference between their best performing athletes and and the ones that were, a little bit less effective, the ones that didn't quite make the national level or regional level. And
I know.
Harry.
No, please go ahead.
Well,
yours.
So a lot of people thought that it would be strength or the ability to contract, and I think that was second place. But first place by a wide margin was the ability to relax muscles. It was how quickly they could relax from full contraction to full relaxation, and that speaks to the limiting factor being excess tension and the body resisting its own movement. Like if you were driving your car holding the brake while you're trying to hit the throttle, you're going to be slowing yourself down. And so doing work with the Neubie at our kind of our more common default settings can be helpful, because we're training the body to preferentially relax and lengthen muscles, creating these inputs that allow that to happen for a variety of reasons. And then there's another approach that I like as kind of a warm up, where we actually would turn down the frequency, so it's coming much slower impulses, like on off 5 to 10 maybe per second. And what's cool about that is that you actually entrain this rhythm within the nervous system where you're teaching the body to turn on and then off and on and off. And there's enough time in between for the individual muscle twitches and motor units to relax in between those contractions. So you can kind of entrain the nervous system to turn on and off and on and off and on and off faster. So I like doing that. If we're training speed, if you have the Neubie on and you're past a motor contraction threshold, you'll actually be slowing down movement. It'll be like having resistance on while you're moving. And so there's a time and a place for that. But if you're trying to train speed, specificity of adaptation is paramount. And so you don't want to do anything that's going to cause you to move slower. So I often would recommend doing that as kind of a warm-up or neurological priming, and then go into your more speed-based movements. And if you're able to move 0.5% to 2 or 3% faster while you're doing that, then you have a chance to adapt to that new motor program and a chance to adapt to moving faster in a more sustainable way.
I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Chris, you there? If we may. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah.
We got you. Yep.
No, that was
Chris,
pretty
did you
much,
have a follow-up on that?
that's kind of what I was thinking, because, so much of what I run my business on has a lot to do with not just amount of force production, but also that we call it the on-off switch. Turn a muscle on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, repetitively. And so that's why that is of such interest to me, and the way that I go about developing athletes, and what was so intriguing to me about Garrett's system. So yeah, that pretty much falls in line with what I was thinking.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I just think is kind of an important piece to add is you guys do a lot and know a lot about speed, strength speed training, and you have these wonderful methods for doing that. And so this isn't meant to replace that by any means. It's meant to augment it, try to amp up the nervous system so that you can get the most out of your athletes when you're going through those wonderful methods, and take something that's good and hopefully make it even more effective so they can get even more out of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it makes a significant difference. And I think the recovery side is important too. So for our athletes listening, we do this with you guys, but you have to understand, like Garrett was talking about earlier, the metabolic demand that's also created as well. You can stimulate a lot of great stuff, but you got to make sure you're recovering in the process, and the Neubie can help with that too. Chris, did you have any other follow up on that? Because I know I had one.
No, man, go for it.
Get into with Garrett.
Yep.
So one of the more interesting things that I really like about the Neubie is the ability for it to utilize frequency specific microcurrent. I'm a big fan of microcurrent. I think Dr. McMacken is a brilliant woman. I think it's awesome, and it's a really cool tool. Would you speak on frequency specific microcurrent and your experience and how you like to implement it? And I got a couple questions to follow up on that too.
This is really interesting because speaks to a lot of really resonates with me, pun intended, as a physics major and as a engineer and that type of thing, because it uses the electrical phenomenon of resonance. So I have I don't know if people are watching this, you'll see I have my car key here. So if I hit the unlock button to my car, it's going to unlock my car, but not if John's car and Chris's car and Mandy's car are in the parking lot. It's not going to unlock your car, because the signal from my key is going to resonate with or speak only to my car. And similarly, that's like how a radio works. If you tune to 100.3, it's going to pick up what's on that station, not the other stations. And so the same thing can happen where if we send a signal into the body of a certain frequency, it may preferentially resonate with certain tissue like liver or ligament or cartilage or skin or connective tissue or peripheral nerve, fascia, etc. So there's actually these codes, or this established list of frequencies that Dr. McMakin has been a champion of. She's got a great book called Resonance that kind of brings this in, or a resonance effect brings this in awesome really good kind of narrative form, but also interesting enough for a clinician to read too. And that gives all these wonderful examples. But where it's really helpful, we've seen, is in trying to preferentially deliver energy to certain tissues to facilitate or accelerate their healing. And then there's also some kind of more specific niche applications, like there's certain combinations of frequencies that can help with scar tissue. And so sometimes chronic pain that we think is more of an orthopedic thing can actually be scar tissue adhesions around a peripheral nerve, for example, some sort of impingement, entrapment, adhesion. And so using the frequencies that would specifically resonate with and help break up scar tissue around those peripheral nerves can have, if you hit the nail on the head, you can see these profound effects. Like if you pick the right hotspots with the Neubie, you can see these amazing, just unexpectedly, seemingly miraculous changes. Same thing, if you pick the right frequencies, you can see some really cool changes in people. So that's the frequency component. The microcurrent component is interesting because most of the work that we do with the Neubie is at a macrocurrent or a higher level where you definitely feel it. In fact, you actually, it's like progressive overload for the nerves. You try to overload your muscles so they grow. You try to overload the nerves so they can grow and adapt and change and tap into the power of neuroplasticity. So not only do you feel it, but we often push outside of the comfort zone where it's productively uncomfortable. Sometimes you have to be outside your comfort zone in order to make changes in life. I think that applies across a lot of disciplines. But with microcurrent, you're actually below the sensory threshold. You're at these lower levels. And one interesting thing that happens there is that you actually get an increase in ATP, whereas at higher levels, you're a lot of challenge. You may diminish ATP perhaps faster than you're making it. But with these, you stimulate an increase in ATP production. And then there's some more subtle effects. I don't know if you guys have both read
Yes.
The Body Electric,
Yes.
right? Robert Becker.
Yeah.
So there's also some really, really interesting effects on the perineural system, which is like the connective tissue scaffolding around the nerve. So there's, of course, the nerves that send these signals like electricity flowing on a wire, and then there's the more like a semiconductor. So not like a conductive wire, but like a semiconductor, different properties in this perineural system. And so it seems like we're also getting some effects there. But if anyone wants a deeper dive in that, I certainly would refer them to Dr. McMakin. We introduce it. We have a level 2 course where we introduce frequency-specific microcurrent, and as you said, John, we certainly use that with the Neubie, and I think that's one of the additional features that helps differentiate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really is a game changer, and it's something really special, for sure. One of the things that Mandy and I have started working on a little bit is actually using this on our horse as well, our horses, to help them. And we've seen some great success. How much information is out there about direct current or electrical current in use with horses or dogs?
So I don't know that literature super well, and I can't say a ton about what literature there is on the use, but a lot of what we draw from, or a lot of the foundational literature that shows us the benefits of direct current on tissue healing are actually in animal models. So there's some work on mice, on rabbits, on dogs. So actually that there is, certainly some overlap there. In terms of working with animals generally, we have a few veterinarians that have devices and are doing a little bit of work. I think you talked with at least one person on our team and kind of compared some notes, because we've had some kind of cool success stories. It hasn't been a major area of our practice, but gosh, it's really rewarding to see a dog or a horse that's hobbling around or can't move, be able to get up and start running again, or be more active, or visibly you can tell they're out of pain, or have significantly reduced pain. So there's really cool opportunities there. And I think the mechanisms are the same. The trick is that you can't necessarily communicate with them in the same way we can with a human, where a human we can say, hey, this is going to hurt, but it's good for you, so you need to power through it. We need to be a little more gentle with the animals, because you don't necessarily want to hurt them or startle them. You want to be able to kind of work with them and ramp up more slowly. But it's amazing. Like, we have, for people, for some people, it seems like an insurmountable challenge to turn the Neubie up to 100. And of course there are people that do it, that we've all seen. But you can, even with animals where you're having to treat them more conservatively, we've seen animals get up to 100. And part of it may be the size and the conductivity, but part of it also is probably the lack of intellectualizing and fear-based resistance and things like that too.
I agree with that.
Absolutely.
Or preconceived notions about things. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the mental side of it's huge.
Yeah.
We've had great success, and we've been open about that. Looking for veterinarians in the area that we can work with to help bring this to our community. But from our family standpoint, what I find very interesting is the response is extremely quick, and it's tremendously impactful. We're talking like 2 sessions, if that. And you say you've heard them take it up to 100. I've never even gone up that high whatsoever. I'm usually getting just above 15-ish, just a little bit, and it's still having a major impact on them. So I really do think it's a great area. At least I know something I'm very passionate about. For sure, it's made a huge difference.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's something that I think there's a really tremendous opportunity, and for people who are passionate about working with animals, we would love to work together and explore more of those avenues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I've really come to enjoy it, because just like you guys are saying, animals are very honest. They don't if something feels good, it, and you can immediately see, for instance, we're working on front leg of our horse, and before we start, he doesn't have any weight on it. He's got it pointed. He's got his weight shifted, and over the course of the treatment, you can visibly see him shift his weight into the leg. There's no more favoring of that, and so it's like, a human might be afraid to use that leg or that arm because it hurt before. Animals aren't like that. They're like, okay, well, that doesn't hurt anymore, so now I'm going to use it. And so it's, like you said, it's rewarding to be able to see
the pros and cons of our intellectual, the extra cortical function that we have here. Sometimes does a lot of good, but sometimes it stands in the way too, and they don't have as much of that.
Right.
Yeah. So excuse me. So yeah, NeuFit and the Neubie has become an integral part of ELP, and we've gone, Garrett, you and I go back a ways, and it's I just want to say like how grateful we are to have a good relationship with you guys, and just how thankful we are for everything that you guys have done. You guys have really put a lot of time, energy, money into all this, and it's impacted thousands and thousands of lives, and I know I speak on behalf of a lot of our clients as well. And saying thanks, man, for all the work that you guys have done, because you've really made an impact, and it's awesome, man. It's really great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate that very much, and it's a mutual admiration society here. I'm just super grateful to be able to work with you, with all three of you, and it's been so cool to see as things grow, how people are not only able to get the same types of of benefits and outcomes that we see here in Austin, but in their communities and people we'd never be able to reach. But then to be able to take it to new levels. I mean, you'll do more with horses because you're passionate about it, and some people work more with elderly patients, some more with pediatrics, some more with different neurological diseases and conditions because they're passionate about it. And to be able to see kind of the breadth of impact grow through that also has been just so wonderful and exciting and rewarding, gratifying. I mean, it's been great. So you guys are a part of that, and I appreciate you.
Oh, heck yeah, man. Well, we're gonna wrap this up for the day. Hopefully, we're able to do this again soon, and keep digging into a little bit more information on it. But Garrett, in the meantime, where can people find you guys?
So, two places. One is our website, and then social media. So on the website is www.neu.fit, N-E-U, like neurological.fit. And social media, we're most active on Instagram. It's NeuFit RFP for rehab, fitness, and performance. And then I'll mention also this is a copy of my book, The NeuFit Method. So if anyone wants a deeper dive, it's on Amazon, and that's a good place to go and learn more. I'll be in the next couple months recording an audiobook too. So gotta kind of work on my vocal training here. I gotta take some lessons from you, John.
I'm an audiobook person, so.
Oh man, that's great.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe I'll have Chris narrate it.
Yeah, you should. I don't know if I'd be a good fit. I don't think I could stay focused long enough to do it. But so I'll gracefully bow out. But man, look, we appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks so much for everything you've done. We're definitely gonna have to do this again. And as I tell everybody at the end of the show, remember, our goal in this is to help our community and our country win. Like Garrett's all the way down in Texas. We're trying to get the knowledge out to everybody and share that and help everybody win and help just help everybody grow, because that's what it's all about. So I ask that you please share the show. We don't run ads, we don't do anything like that. Just please share the show and just help spread the message so we can keep this up and we can continue to connect with guys like Garrett and others across the country that are really doing some special stuff. So please share the show, guys. That's going to wrap it up today. Garrett, thank you again for coming on.
Yeah,
we are very appreciative, man. And you guys have a great day. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys. And we will talk to y'all soon.
Thank you.
See ya.